It's now more than 100 days since the first recorded case of COVID-19 in our state, 92 days since the first person died from the virus, and 91 days since we instituted the first set of measures to suppress the spread of the virus and protect as many people as possible from its deadly power. In total, today, as always, we think of the 1,695 people who, as of last night, have died from or with COVID-19, and a further 537 who've died in Northern Ireland. Their lives shone brightly and were brought to an end before their time. As in Oireachtas, we seek to honour their lives as we mourn their deaths. In total, 25,231 people in the Republic of Ireland have been diagnosed with COVID-19. 92% have recovered fully, with more on the mend. Some 367,780 tests have been carried out, including 19,364 in the past week, of which 185 were positive, resulting in a positivity rate of less than 1% for the first time. That's down from a peak of 20% back in April. This rate continues to decline and is very encouraging. It indicates that the easing of restrictions on our economy and people has not enabled the virus to make a comeback, at least not so far. Last Thursday, when I spoke in the Dáil, we had 47 new cases recorded the evening before. Yesterday evening, it was 19. This time last week, we had 36 people in ICU, that's down to 29, and 165 in hospital with COVID, that's down to 92. It's 42 days since we published the roadmap to reopen our country, and 4 days since we moved into Phase 2+, enabling us to take small but meaningful steps to where we want to be when this is over. The Government is now conducting extensive work with the help of NPHET on the revised Phase 3 and Phase 4 of the roadmap, so we can have the country almost fully opened by the middle of July instead of the middle of August as originally planned. However, some measures, such as public health advice and bans on mass gatherings, may need to continue for some time. These are still the early stages, so it's too soon to evaluate how Phase 2+ is going, but the early indications are favourable. As a country, we're optimistic but cautious. We're hopeful while avoiding unnecessary risk. In the fine balancing act that our lives have become, we are getting things right more often than not. Our plan is working, and we should stick to it. It all depends, of course, on us continuing to keep the virus under control, and there's always a risk that it might make a comeback. But the last couple of days have been quite encouraging, notwithstanding the daily tragedy of new notified deaths to the Department of Health. We're continuing to secure and stockpile supplies of PPE in case there's a second wave in the future, and improve testing and tracing turnaround times. In this way, we can deal with resurgences locally without having to bring in major restrictions across the country again. As part of Phase 2, the Cabinet made a decision to get childcare services reopened because so much of our recovery depends on it. From the 29th of June, childcare services can reopen to ensure that one more obstacle is removed from stressed and anxious parents. We are, of course, all aware that very many childcare services close in the months in July and August, but we would anticipate that the vast majority of those that usually open for the summer months will reopen at the end of June. Whether it's health or social care workers or parents unable to return to work otherwise, the reopening of childcare centres provides reassurance and makes what they do possible. It's also necessary to ensure that vulnerable children, as well as those who are homeless, experiencing poverty or disadvantage or child welfare issues, are looked out for. I want to extend my thanks to Minister Zappone and her officials for the work that they've done to make all this possible. Thanks to everyone's hard work in pushing back the spread of the virus, it's now safe to implement a summer programme for children with special educational needs and disadvantaged children. There will be a particular emphasis on social inclusion programmes, such as the school completion programme, as well as numeracy and literacy programmes for deaf schools. I believe it is right and appropriate that we're prioritising those at greatest risk of educational disadvantage. It's also right that students with special educational needs benefit from the opportunities provided by the programme and don't miss out on this year. In line with public health guidance, the summer programme will be a home-based and school-based one and will be supported by the HSE as well as the Department of Education. So much will depend on schools, teachers and special needs assistants choosing to participate. And I know that everyone will do what they can to make sure this works. But I do appeal to schools, teachers and special needs assistants, please do participate, because we can't do this without you. The focus of the programme will be on students and young people with complex needs, including those who have significant behavioural, social, emotional and sensory difficulties. Children with Down syndrome will be included and will be able to participate and benefit from what's on offer. Minister McHugh and Minister Harris will bring specific proposals to Cabinet tomorrow for approval. A Oireachtas na Hibertí Móra rin an pobal chun scapu an virus a hungu agus daoine eile a cosint, bhí sé slán leanú a raig leis an dara céim den blan a hosnú conardír a oscailt ar an luan. Tugann an seachtain seo gach eile cúis a bheith dóchasach agus dearfach i le na todhchaí. Tá na sríanta á laidú agus tá daoine ag dul ar ais ag obair. Tá na siopaí ag a oscailt, agus tá ardír ag a oscailt. Ach tá muid fós a géirí ar daoine go leanfaí siad a raig leis na cleachtaí cearta a bhí á dhéanamh acu ar nós. Fannacht amach go fisicach ó dhaoine eile. Ja nós féireacht casachtach a chhlaachú. Taistáil nach bhfuil gá leis a sheachant. Agus le ling na drí seachtaní a thugging fan áitiúla. Anois tá ag déanamh planála chun dlús a chur ar na bartas na céimeanna eile, le gá ceann fós le gá. Mar cuide tá ag déanamh planála chun tuarasóireacht agus fáilteachas a tosnú ar an níl lá is fiche den bheitheh. Níl an saoirí caiilte againn, agus má cuineamid ag déanamh na rudaí ceart, is féidirling a bheith dóchasach faoi cad atá in an-doing. Ceann Comhairle, when we began phase 1 of the roadmap, the Health and Safety Authority initiated a new national programme of inspections to ensure the safety of employees and customers when shops and businesses reopened. Between the 18th of May and the 5th of June, over 1,200 inspections were carried out by the authority, with more than 1,000 relating specifically to the return to work protocol. These inspections were completed across a range of industry sectors, including construction, which accounted for close to half of all inspections. An initial analysis of specific COVID-19 inspections shows that employers are generally taking a responsible and proactive approach. Approximately 3/4 of employers had a response plan in place. 8 in 10 had completed employee induction training, 9 in 10 had COVID control measures in place. The HSA checklists and templates to drive implementation of the protocol have now been downloaded over 30,000 times. So I want to thank employers, employees and business organisations and trade unions for their contribution and for helping us to get back to work and to get businesses open. The HSA is now working on further material for lead worker representatives and supporting a range of stakeholder groups as they seek to develop their own plans for a safe return. I know that this pandemic has hit some sections of society harder than others, and some of those who could least withstand it have suffered the most. Last Friday, the government considered the impact of the pandemic on people with disabilities, travellers, members of the Roma community, vulnerable migrants, among others. We know the Gardaí have charged over 100 men with domestic abuse offences in recent weeks, and that unfortunately for some, the message of stay at home meant they could not stay safe, because their homes are not safe places. To all those living in fear because of domestic abuse or having experienced violence, I'm deeply sorry that the restrictions have made things more difficult for you. But there are people available to help. The Gardaí are just a phone call away. Or if you want to talk to someone first, please reach out to family and friends or call one of the government-supported helplines. The Department of Justice is carrying out an analysis of the gender implications of the pandemic, and this work will inform the next iteration of the Social Implications Report and shape the actions we will take to help those most at risk. Count Corla, as Professor Philip Nolan explained to the Special Committee on COVID-19 response on Tuesday, the government's strategy is not one of mitigation, it is one of suppression, suppressing the virus to very low levels, to zero if possible, by keeping the R number well below 1. Unfortunately, as he noted, no strategy utterly insulates us from the risk of the virus re-emerging in our society. We share an open land border with Northern Ireland, which has unrestricted travel with Great Britain, and that is a Westminster competence, not a Stormont one. Our society, our economy, our personal liberties are European, and we're deeply implemented with the European Union. Indeed, we're European citizens. So closing ourselves off from the rest of the world is not an option for Ireland in the medium to long term. So we need to be prepared for the risk of imported cases as we reopen slowly to other countries. We need a testing and tracing system capable of identifying new cases, new clusters, and a resurgence of the virus quickly, so we can contain it, and so we do not need to return to a national lockdown again. I'm confident we can do that. When we make our decisions, whether to restrict the way we live at the start of this emergency or to reopen our country now, we have at all times followed the fundamental principle of protecting lives and not doing harm. And we know there are many types of harm. It's lost lives, but it can also be lost livelihoods. It's the damage to our children's education, the impact of a prolonged period of isolation on our mental health, or the harm caused by delaying treatment for non-COVID related illnesses or diseases, also known as secondary deaths. So in the weeks ahead, we'll continue to follow this approach of minimising harm and protecting lives as we work to rebuild our economy, reopen our country, and realise our vision for a safe, secure and sustainable new way of living. As always, I welcome the comments, questions and suggestions of members. Thank you.